Elena Smith was a radiant 35-year-old woman whose long, ebony locks cascaded gracefully over her shoulders, complementing her warm brown eyes that shimmered with profound kindness and boundless compassion. Her allure extended far beyond her striking physical features, emanating from the depth of her generosity and her unwavering love for humanity. In her community, Elena was a beacon of admiration, known for her unwavering dedication to helping others. She possessed a heart brimming with empathy and always managed to carve out time from her bustling schedule to touch the lives of those around her meaningfully. One of her most cherished activities was delivering gifts to the local orphanage, a heartfelt routine aimed at bringing a spark of joy and a glimmer of hope to children devoid of family. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. On one sun-drenched afternoon, Elena meticulously prepared the gifts with an abundance of care and love. This time, her destination was an orphanage in a neighboring town, a place she was visiting for the very first time. She carefully selected vibrant toys, cozy winter attire, and enchanting children's books, all the while picturing the radiant smiles that would light up the children's faces upon receiving their gifts. When she arrived at the orphanage, she was warmly welcomed by the children, who eagerly swarmed around her, their eyes wide with anticipation. Elena distributed the gifts with sheer joy, relishing every precious moment spent with the children. Amid this heartwarming chaos, her gaze locked onto a particular boy. His mischievous grin illuminated his face, his azure eyes sparkled with innocence, and his tousled black hair fell charmingly over his forehead. Intrigued, Elena approached the boy and handed him a toy. He responded with a gentle, grateful smile, revealing a missing front tooth that made him all the more endearing. When she inquired about his name, he shyly replied, "Oliver." At just 6 years old, Oliver possessed a captivating presence, his gaze holding a strange familiarity that tugged at Elena's heartstrings as if she had known him from another time or place, though she couldn't pinpoint where. A few days later, Elena found herself at her in-law's home, where her mother-in-law, Mary, was excitedly poring over old photographs of her children during their younger days. Among the treasured photos, Mary pulled out one of Charlie, Elena's late husband, as a boy. His black hair, sparkling blue eyes, and mischievous smile mirrored those of Oliver. As Elena gazed at the photograph, a wave of nostalgia and familiarity washed over her. The image seemed vividly real, almost as if she had encountered that boy before, yet she couldn't recall where. Charlie's infectious smile and playful expression were so eerily reminiscent of Oliver's that they left her deeply intrigued. However, she quickly dismissed these uncanny thoughts, attributing them to mere coincidence. In the quiet moments that followed, Elena couldn't shake off the strange connection she felt. The similarities between Charlie's childhood photo and Oliver's were too striking to ignore. The echoes of the past intertwined with the present, leaving her with a profound sense of wonder and an unspoken bond with the little boy she had just met. Elena felt a compelling urge to return to the orphanage in the neighboring town a few days later. She packed more gifts and donations, eager to see Oliver again and explore the nagging questions in her mind. Upon her arrival, she eagerly scanned the room for him and found the boy sitting intently, working on fixing a toy car. His eyes were laser-focused, and his demeanor was one of seriousness and determination. In a moment of deep concentration, he scratched his chin and furrowed his brow, a gesture that instantly reminded Elena of her husband, Charlie. Charlie had the same habit when he was deeply engrossed in something or worried. The striking resemblance between Oliver and Charlie, not just in looks but also in mannerisms, only fueled Elena's curiosity. Was this all just a series of coincidences, or was there a deeper connection? The answer seemed elusive, pushing her further into a state of intrigue and determination to uncover the truth. As days passed, Elena found it impossible to shake off her thoughts about Oliver. Her mind was a whirlwind of doubts and questions, constantly replaying the uncanny similarities she had observed. She felt isolated in her suspicions, unable to share them with anyone, least of all her husband. She feared he would dismiss her concerns as irrational, and she was beginning to question her sanity. Elena pondered the possibility that her suspicions might be grounded in reality. Even if Charlie had been unfaithful, why would Oliver end up in an orphanage instead of being with his mother? Was Charlie even aware of the boy's existence? Had he abandoned Oliver because he wasn't a legitimate son? Such thoughts were unbearable. And yet, Elena couldn't stop questioning. She struggled to reconcile the loving image she had of Charlie with the disturbing scenarios her mind was conjuring. Every aspect of their relationship, every shared memory, was now under scrutiny. One evening after dinner, as they sat together, Charlie moved his right arm to scratch his wrist, exposing a small birthmark. Elena noticed it immediately, although she had seen it countless times before. Sensing her gaze, Charlie explained, "It's a birthmark. Everyone in my family has one. You remember, even my sister has it." Elena nodded, masking her true concern. That simple mark now consumed her thoughts, turning into an obsession. On her next day off, she resolved to visit the orphanage once more, this time with a specific purpose. She needed to see if Oliver had that same birthmark. This clue could either confirm her worst fears or put her mind at ease, but the thought of what she might discover filled her with both dread and anticipation. The following morning, Elena set out early, her heart pounding with anxiety and hope. Arriving at the orphanage, she found Oliver playing quietly. As she knelt beside him, she subtly guided his movements, searching for a glimpse of his wrist. Her breath caught in her throat when she finally saw a small, unmistakable birthmark, identical to Charlie's. The confirmation was a jolt to her system, a mix of horror and heartbreak. The boy who so reminded her of her beloved husband was indeed connected to him in a way she had never imagined. The reality of it all settled heavily on her shoulders as she faced the undeniable truth. Elena's world was spinning. The boy's birthmark was the confirmation she dreaded yet sought. Her mind raced with scenarios and questions, each more unsettling than the last. She realized she had to confront Charlie, to seek answers and understand the full extent of what she had uncovered. Her love for him was now intertwined with a web of deceit and hidden truths, and she had to unravel it all to find some semblance of peace. Finally, Elena's much-anticipated day off arrived, and she wasted no time heading to the orphanage. Her heart raced with a mix of anxiety and determination as she searched for Oliver, masking her true intentions behind a warm smile. She knew she couldn't simply grab the boy's arm, she had to be subtle. She found Oliver playing with other children, and the moment he spotted her, his face lit up with an open, radiant smile that showcased his captivating blue eyes. He ran to her and hugged her tightly. Elena returned the embrace, feeling a deep fondness for the boy. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to be enveloped by Oliver's pure joy and innocence, almost forgetting the real reason for her visit. However, the memory of her purpose resurfaced quickly. She didn't need to grab his arm after all. Oliver scratched his wrist in a manner strikingly similar to how Charles had done a few days earlier. With a glance, Elena's breath caught in her throat. There it was, the same birthmark that adorned her husband's wrist, now visible on Oliver's. They were identical, differing only in size. The revelation sent a shockwave through her, confirming what she had feared. Elena felt a whirlwind of emotions. The overwhelming similarities and coincidences were too glaring to ignore. Discreetly, she managed to take a photo of the boy's wrist, not entirely sure why, but feeling compelled to document this astonishing discovery. The question now was what to do next. This revelation stirred a tumultuous mix of emotions within her. She felt a deep satisfaction in helping the children at the orphanage, yet a gnawing worry began to take root in her heart. The thought that Oliver might be Charles's son, the product of an affair, haunted her relentlessly. She tried to focus on the joy of her visit, But the persistent doubt kept gnawing at her, making her question the truth behind the striking resemblance. The days that followed were torturous for Elena. She found herself growing increasingly distant from Charles, unable to bring herself to speak to him. The mere possibility of his infidelity shattered her heart. She avoided his gaze, turned away when he tried to kiss her, and shunned intimacy, feigning illness. In 10 years of marriage, this had never happened before, and she knew he had noticed. From the beginning of their relationship, she had made it clear to Charles that infidelity would be a deal breaker. They had promised to be loyal and faithful to each other. If their relationship ever faced difficulties, they would talk and try to resolve them. If reconciliation was impossible, they would separate, but betrayal was never an option. These values formed the bedrock of their love and trust, the foundation upon which they had built their lives together. The doubt now tearing at her heart made Elena question everything. The love and trust she once felt so deeply were now overshadowed by suspicion and pain. She found herself constantly replaying moments and conversations, searching for clues she might have missed. Her mind was a battleground of love and distrust, each day bringing a new wave of emotional turmoil. The resemblance between Oliver and Charles was too strong to dismiss, and Elena knew she had to confront the truth, no matter how devastating it might be. The journey to uncovering that truth, however, was fraught with fear and uncertainty, leaving Elena feeling more isolated and conflicted than ever before. Elena knew she had to resolve the issue that had been tormenting her. During a break at work, she confided in her best friend, Christina, sharing everything about her suspicions and discoveries. Christina listened intently, having known Charles well over the years from frequent visits to their home. She found it hard to believe that Charles could be unfaithful, given the deep love he and Elena shared. However, Christina couldn't ignore that Elena's concerns were based on plausible observations, even if they didn't definitively prove Oliver's paternity. Understanding the delicacy of the situation, Christina suggested a rational approach: a DNA test. She mentioned a friend who owned a laboratory and could expedite the process. Christina advised Elena to discuss the results with Charles regardless of the outcome, as he deserved to know what was troubling her. Elena agreed and decided to gather the necessary samples for testing. Meanwhile, Charles had noticed Elena's unusual behavior. She seemed distant and preoccupied, as if something heavy was weighing on her mind, yet she wouldn't open up about it. When he asked, she brushed it off, attributing her mood to fatigue and work-related stress. Elena's demanding schedule as a nurse, coupled with her responsibilities at home and her charity work at the orphanages, often left her exhausted. Charles, a software developer who sometimes worked from home, initially dismissed her demeanor as temporary stress. But as days turned into weeks, he realized that something deeper was troubling his wife. Their interactions became increasingly strained. They barely kissed, and intimacy was non-existent. Charles racked his brain, trying to recall if he had done something to upset her, but nothing stood out. Determined to address the issue, Charles sought opportunities to talk to Elena, but she had become more withdrawn and irritable. He knew they needed to resolve whatever was causing this rift between them. Unfortunately, an urgent business trip came up, and he had to leave for a week. It was a critical client meeting, and with his partner unavailable due to a family emergency, Charles had no choice but to go. Before his departure, he observed something puzzling. Elena seemed almost relieved by his impending absence. This baffled him even more. Had she grown tired of him? Was she involved with someone else? He quickly dismissed the thought, knowing Elena's loyalty and their strong bond. They had always been partners, friends, and lovers. So what had changed? As he packed for his trip, Charles was filled with anxiety and confusion. He needed answers but knew he would have to wait until he returned to have a proper conversation with Elena. Talking over the phone wouldn't suffice for such a serious matter. During Charles's absence, Elena focused on collecting the DNA samples and taking them to Christina's friend at the lab. The days dragged on as she anxiously awaited the results, her mind racing with various scenarios. She tried to maintain her usual routine, but her thoughts were constantly consumed by the possible implications of the test. She reflected on her marriage, their shared memories, and the values they had built their relationship upon. The fear of what she might discover weighed heavily on her heart. Finally, the day came when the results were ready. Elena's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. The truth was now staring back at her, and she knew she couldn't delay the inevitable conversation with Charles any longer. The result confirmed her deepest fears. Oliver was indeed Charles's son. The revelation hit her like a tidal wave, bringing with it a storm of emotions: betrayal, hurt, confusion, and an aching sense of loss. How could the man she loved and trusted have kept such a secret from her? When Charles returned, he found Elena waiting for him, her expression a mixture of sadness and determination. She knew she had to confront him with the truth, no matter how painful it would be for both of them. Taking a deep breath, Elena began to recount her discoveries, the DNA test, and the doubts that had been eating away at her. Charles listened in stunned silence, the weight of her words sinking in. He felt a crushing guilt and sorrow for the pain he had caused her, realizing that their relationship now stood at a precipice, with trust shattered and their future uncertain. As the night wore on, they talked through tears and heartfelt confessions. Charles explained the circumstances that led to Oliver's existence, and Elena grappled with the conflicting emotions of love and betrayal. It was a conversation neither of them had ever imagined having, but it was necessary for their healing. They both knew that rebuilding their trust would be a long and challenging journey, but it was a step they had to take together if they wanted to salvage their marriage and move forward. Elena managed to collect the samples for the DNA tests, knowing she would have to wait 7 agonizing days for the results. When Charles informed her of his business trip, she felt an unexpected wave of relief. His absence would give her exactly the time she needed to process her emotions and confront the truth. The solitude of their now empty house became her refuge, allowing her the space to contemplate the next steps in her unraveling life. The day the DNA test results arrived, her heart pounded with a mix of fear and anticipation. She sat alone at the kitchen table, where she and Charles once shared countless meals and intimate moments, now feeling a chasm between them wider than ever. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope and meticulously read each word. Tears welled up in her eyes as her worst fears were confirmed. Oliver was indeed Charles's son. The confirmation was a crushing blow, sending her into a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, disappointment, and profound pain. Elena sat in the living room, staring at the document that irrevocably changed her reality. She felt torn between her affection for Oliver, an innocent child caught in the crossfire of adult mistakes, and the stark reality of Charles's betrayal. Memories of Oliver's smiles, his playful antics, and his growing attachment to her flooded her mind, juxtaposed with the cold truth that he was living proof of her husband's infidelity, a wound that now seemed irreparable. Elena knew she couldn't ignore the truth staring back at her. Despite her deep love for Charles, his betrayal crossed a line she had always deemed unbreachable. He knew the importance she placed on fidelity from the very beginning of their relationship. She pondered over how to confront Charles with this devastating truth, knowing that it would inevitably mark the end of their marriage. The bond of trust had been shattered beyond repair. As she looked at the photographs of Charles and Oliver, a sharp pain pierced her heart. She knew what she had to do, but the decision didn't come any easier for it. Confronting Charles and accepting the end of their marriage was a prospect that filled her with dread. Yet she knew she had to stay true to herself and her principles. Elena gathered all the evidence, the photographs, and the DNA test results, and braced herself for Charles's return. She sent him a message, letting him know she was at home and that they needed to talk. Charles, already uneasy from the lack of communication during his trip, felt a growing sense of dread. Her monosyllabic responses and the emotional distance she had maintained throughout the week gnawed at him. As he made his way home, a tightness gripped his chest, a foreboding sense that something was wrong. Upon entering the house, Charles found Elena waiting for him, her expression a mix of sorrow and resolve. She motioned for him to sit down, and with a heavy heart, she began to recount her suspicions, the steps she took, and the incontrovertible evidence she had uncovered. Charles listened, stunned into silence, the gravity of her words sinking in slowly. He felt a wave of guilt and sorrow wash over him as he realized the depth of the pain he had caused Elena. The conversation that followed was filled with raw emotions, painful truths, and heartfelt confessions. Charles tried to explain the circumstances that led to Oliver's existence, but the damage was done. Elena grappled with her conflicting feelings of love for Charles and the betrayal that now defined their relationship. The trust they had once cherished was now in tatters, and both of them knew that rebuilding it would be an arduous journey if it was even possible at all. They spent the night talking, crying, and attempting to make sense of the new reality they faced. Despite the deep wounds, both realized that they needed to move forward, whether together or apart, in a manner that would allow them to heal. The road ahead was uncertain, but for Elena, facing the truth and staying true to her values was the first step toward finding peace. Elena was resolute it was time to confront Charles with the truth that had been tormenting her. She called him for a serious conversation in the living room, her heart pounding as she prepared to reveal everything. With trembling hands, she handed him the envelope containing the DNA test results and several photos of Oliver. Charles, both confused and surprised, opened the envelope and carefully read the document. His eyes widened as the reality of the words sank in. Before he could respond, Elena showed him the photos of Oliver. "Look at him, Charles," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. "He is your son." Charles glanced at the photos, then at Elena and back at the photos again. He appeared stunned, unable to comprehend the enormity of the situation. Elena's emotions overflowed, and she began to cry, tears streaming down her face as she poured out her pain and disappointment. "Do you know what hurts the most, Charles?" she asked, her voice thick with sorrow. "Oliver is 6 years old, the same age our son would have been if he hadn't died after birth. While I was grieving our loss, you were out there fathering a child with someone else. How could you do this to me? How could you betray me like this?" Elena demanded to know why Oliver was in an orphanage, questioning why he wasn't with his mother if he was indeed Charles's legitimate son. Her questions hung in the air, amplifying the heavy silence filled with raw emotion. The confrontation was devastating for both of them. Charles was reeling, struggling to grasp what was happening. He tried to argue, explain, and plead for Elena's trust, but his words seemed to fall into a void. "I swear, Elena, I didn't cheat on you," he said, his eyes brimming with tears. "I don't know how this happened. I don't know who this boy is, but I know I didn't cheat on you. Elena, I love you. I would never do something like this." But Elena was resolute. The evidence was undeniable. She couldn't ignore the truth staring back at her. Betrayal had always been a line she wouldn't tolerate, a line Charles had seemingly crossed. "I can't do this anymore, Charles," she said, her voice breaking with pain. "I can't stay with someone who has shattered my trust like this. I want a divorce." Charles, desperate and heartbroken, tried to reach out to her, but Elena turned away, her resolve firm. The bond they had shared, the love and trust that had been the foundation of their relationship, were now irreparably broken. Elena knew that moving forward without Charles was the only way to heal, even if the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty and pain. The words fell from Elena's lips like a final verdict, irrevocably altering the course of their marriage. She implored Charles to leave the house, at least temporarily, so they could navigate the tangled web of divorce proceedings. She urged him to visit the orphanage, to see the boy and take on his paternal responsibilities, even though he was bewildered by the entire situation. In a haze of desperation, Charles hastily packed his suitcase, the same one he had barely unpacked from his last trip. Leaving for a hotel, Charles felt utterly shattered and profoundly lost amidst this turmoil. He had never in his wildest dreams imagined such a scenario, losing Elena over something he vehemently denied doing. Meanwhile, Elena remained in the house that had once been their sanctuary, now a place filled with echoes of a love that seemed so distant. She understood that moving on would be an arduous journey, but she also knew she couldn't continue living a lie. The painful truth was all that mattered now. At the hotel, Charles was engulfed in a storm of emotions. The notion that he could have fathered a child outside of their marriage was inconceivable to him. He replayed every moment of his past, searching for any shred of logic in this bewildering situation. The boy's birthmark, the striking resemblance, everything seemed to point in one undeniable direction. Yet, deep down, Charles knew he had never betrayed Elena. He loved her with every fiber of his being and would never have jeopardized their marriage. Resolute in his need for clarity, Charles headed to the orphanage to meet Oliver. The moment he saw the boy, something inexplicable stirred within him. Oliver was the mirror image of Charles as a child. There was an unspoken bond between them. Introducing himself as Elena's husband, Charles was deeply moved by the affection Oliver had for her. It pierced his heart. With doubts and emotions swirling, Charles resolved to investigate this mystery thoroughly. He couldn't accept that his marriage would end like this. There had to be a deeper truth, something he had yet to uncover. He decided to speak with the orphanage director, a compassionate and optimistic woman who viewed Oliver as a beacon of hope for a loving adoption. She spoke with great enthusiasm about the boy, highlighting his special qualities. Her words resonated with Charles, who mentally cataloged every detail she shared. The director discussed Oliver's age and the challenges older children face in finding adoptive families. She had a strong intuition that Oliver was meant for something special, potentially even adoption by Charles and Elena. The striking physical resemblance between Charles and Oliver had not escaped her notice either. As Charles left the orphanage, his heart ached with a mixture of confusion and hope. He knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he was determined to uncover the truth and, if possible, restore the shattered remnants of his marriage. As Charles listened intently to the director, he couldn't help but reflect on his encounter with Oliver. The genuine fondness he felt for the boy was undeniable, yet how could this child be his? He meticulously revisited every detail, every conversation with Elena, trying to grasp how this could be possible without him having betrayed her. Leaving the orphanage, his mind was a whirlwind of confusion. He had a clue about Oliver's birth date, but the pieces of this bewildering puzzle still refused to fit together. Was Oliver truly his son? How could he explain this to Elena? Consumed by doubts and uncertainties, he knew he had to find answers before confronting his wife. Lost in his thoughts, Charles was stunned by the absurd possibility taking shape in his mind. He needed help to comprehend the situation. Deciding to seek out his friend Liam, a trusted lawyer, he headed to his office, burdened by his suspicions. Once there, Charles laid out the materials Elena had given him and began to voice his theory. He spoke with a blend of anxiety and disbelief, explaining how the DNA test indicated Oliver was his son, despite his unwavering certainty that he had never cheated on Elena. Liam listened intently, though his expression was skeptical. Liam questioned whether Charles was sure of his fidelity, to which Charles vehemently affirmed his innocence. Convinced by his friend's conviction, Liam proposed conducting a new DNA test to confirm the theory. He knew that concrete evidence was vital for navigating such a delicate situation. Thus, Liam tasked Charles with gathering the necessary materials for the new tests while they planned the next steps. Uncertainty lingered in the air, and Charles knew that the answers could irrevocably alter his life and marriage. Meanwhile, Elena, unaware of Charles's investigation, was engulfed in profound sadness. The days had turned gray and lifeless since she discovered what she believed to be Charles's betrayal. Loving him so deeply and feeling so profoundly betrayed was an unbearable pain. The realization that her marriage might be over left a gaping void in her heart, one she didn't know how to fill. She hadn't yet filed for divorce, needing time to process the overwhelming situation. Since that fateful confrontation about Oliver's paternity, she hadn't seen Charles, leaving her to grapple with her heartbreak alone. In the solitude of the house that once symbolized their shared dreams, Elena was left to reflect on the memories of their love, now tainted by doubt and pain. The once warm and loving home felt cold and empty, each room a reminder of what was lost. She longed for clarity, for the truth to come to light, even though it might shatter her world further. The uncertainty weighed heavily on her, but she knew that whatever lay ahead, she couldn't continue living in deception. The painful journey of uncovering the truth was the only path forward, no matter how arduous it might be. For a fleeting moment, Elena considered the possibility of believing Charles. His sincere denial and the look of hurt etched on his face as he left their home echoed in her mind. Despite this, the evidence was overwhelming. The photos and the DNA test, how could he not be Oliver's biological father? Yet, Charles's feelings of offense and hurt troubled her deeply. How dare he feel that way when he was the one who had seemingly shattered their marriage vows? A few days ago, their housekeeper had informed her that Charles needed to come by to pick up some documents. Elena was indifferent to the news. She knew these visits would be necessary for a while, but she instructed the housekeeper to ensure she wasn't at home when he came. The thought of seeing him was too painful. She needed more time to process everything. Charles, on the other hand, was anxiously awaiting the test results. He had scheduled a meeting with Liam, expecting the results to be ready by 2 p.m. That day, his heart pounded with a mix of fear and hope. When he finally received the envelope, his hands trembled as he opened it. His eyes scanned the lines of the document, and then his face lit up with relief and triumph. "I knew it," he whispered to himself, feeling a wave of validation wash over him. He hurried to show the results to Liam, who could hardly believe what he was seeing. "This is unbelievable," Liam said, astonished by the unexpected turn of events. "Are you going to talk to Elena?" he asked, curious about Charles's next move. "Yes, I need to speak with her," Charles replied, carefully storing the document. "But we also need to dive into the second part of this investigation. We have to figure out how this could have happened, Liam." "I agree," Liam responded thoughtfully. "I'll take the necessary steps and request priority on this case. I believe we won't encounter any issues, as this could lead to a scandal and bad publicity for them. They should be cooperative." As Charles left Liam's office, a mixture of relief and determination surged through him. He knew that proving his innocence was just the beginning. The next step was to uncover the truth behind the bewildering situation with Oliver. The thought of seeing Elena again filled him with both hope and apprehension. He longed to restore their relationship but was acutely aware of the delicate road ahead. Meanwhile, Elena continued to grapple with her emotions. The days felt interminably long, filled with an aching void where her trust in Charles used to be. She couldn't shake the image of his pained expression, and it gnawed at her resolve. The love she still felt for him clashed with the betrayal she believed he had committed. Her heart was a battleground of conflicting feelings, making every day a struggle to move forward. When Charles finally arrived at their house to collect his documents, the housekeeper ensured Elena was out, as instructed. He moved through the familiar rooms, now tinged with memories of happier times, and his heart ached for what they had lost. Determined to fix things, he gathered his documents and left, more resolved than ever to uncover the truth and fight for their marriage. In the days that followed, both Charles and Elena found themselves at the mercy of their thoughts and emotions. Charles, driven by the need to clear his name and win back his wife's trust, and Elena, torn between the love she still held for him and the overwhelming evidence of his alleged betrayal. As the investigation progressed, both knew that the answers they sought would either heal their wounds or confirm their worst fears. But one thing was certain: neither was willing to give up without uncovering the full truth. Elena made the heartfelt decision to visit Oliver at the orphanage. Days had turned into an eternity since she last laid eyes on the boy she adored, and her heart ached with longing. As she entered the orphanage and saw Oliver, her emotions overflowed. The tender hug he gave her and his innocent, radiant smile melted her heart completely. Despite knowing now that Oliver was Charles's son, her love for him was unwavering and profound. This bittersweet reality tugged at her soul. She yearned to give Oliver the best life possible, yet the pain of her husband's betrayal cut deeply. Spending precious moments with Oliver, Elena struggled to banish thoughts of Charles from her mind. She desperately wanted to savor this special time with the boy, free from the shadow of her husband's actions. But it was nearly impossible to ignore the lingering presence of Charles in their lives, even though the divorce was imminent. Meanwhile, Charles was in a state of desperation, eager to speak with Elena. He felt an urgent need to explain himself and salvage what was left of their relationship. Upon discovering her whereabouts, he rushed to the orphanage with haste. When Charles arrived, the sight of Elena and Oliver together filled him with a tumult of emotions. As he approached and embraced Oliver, happiness and anxiety mingled within him. Elena watched the poignant scene of father and son bonding, and her heart was pierced with mixed feelings. She was relieved to see Oliver so cherished and cared for, but this also signaled the finality of her marriage. She knew it was time to face the harsh truth and discuss the divorce with Charles, despite the deep pain it caused her. Sensing Elena's inner turmoil, Charles implored her to stay a little longer. He was desperate to explain himself, clinging to the hope that she might find it in her heart to understand. The three of them stood there, enveloped in heavy silence, until Charles finally gathered the courage to speak, breaking the stillness that hung in the air. "Elena, we need to talk," Charles said, his voice steady yet brimming with emotion. "I know everything between us is a tangled mess, but there's something crucial you need to know." They found a secluded spot within the orphanage to have this conversation. Elena's tension was palpable as she braced herself for the revelation Charles was about to make. He took a deep breath, grasped her hands, and with a trembling voice, began, "Elena, I understand everything seems bewildering and agonizing right now, but there's something the tests revealed that will change everything. Oliver isn't just my son, he's yours too." Elena's eyes widened in shock, struggling to process what she was hearing. Charles handed her the DNA test results, confirming that they were both Oliver's biological parents. Tears welled up in Elena's eyes, mingling with a storm of emotions. She glanced at Oliver, who was innocently playing outside, and then back at Charles, whose gaze was a mix of hope and fear. "How is this possible?" Elena whispered, still reeling from the revelation. Charles explained that Liam had been investigating and it appeared to be a hospital error, a case of switched babies, or something similar. He had just received the results and felt compelled to share this life-altering discovery with her. Elena looked at Oliver with newfound recognition, seeing familiar traits she had overlooked before. Her heart surged with relief and gratitude for the return of her son. Meeting Charles's eyes, Elena gripped his hands tightly. "Charles, I'm sorry for not believing in you. I was so quick to assume the worst, to judge without knowing the truth. Now, I see it all clearly, and I know you have always been faithful. Please forgive me for doubting you." Charles's eyes softened as he felt the weight of Elena's words. The revelation had shattered their world only to rebuild it with an unexpected blessing. They sat there, hand in hand, feeling the profound shift in their relationship, realizing that together they could face whatever came next with renewed strength and understanding. Charles smiled gently, brushing her face with his hand. "Elena, there's nothing to forgive. I understand your reaction given the circumstances. The important thing is that we're together now, and we can move forward stronger than ever." They embraced, feeling the connection and love that had always been there, even in the toughest times. "I love you," Charles Elena whispered. "And I love you, Elena, always and forever," Charles replied, sealing his words with a tender kiss. "Our son Oliver is our son," Elena said, her voice choked with emotion. He looked at Oliver, who was innocently playing on the floor, and then back at Elena. "Yes, let's get him out of here as soon as possible." "Liam is already taking care of it too," Charles continued, holding his wife's hand. Given the circumstances, they were granted temporary custody of Oliver. The family was finally reunited, but the discoveries were far from over. Days later, Liam unearthed the truth behind the hospital's grave mistake. The babies had been switched, and Oliver had been mistakenly identified as the son of a 16-year-old girl whose baby had tragically died. The girl, overwhelmed by her circumstances, had given up Oliver for adoption, believing she had lost her child. Due to Oliver's health issues, finding adoptive parents willing and able to provide for his medical needs had been challenging, resulting in his extended stay at the orphanage. As these revelations came to light, Elena and Charles's hearts ached for the young mother who had unknowingly lost her child and for Oliver, who had spent years in the orphanage. The sorrow was mixed with relief and joy, knowing their son was finally home. They felt a profound sense of gratitude and responsibility, vowing to give Oliver the love and care he deserved. The path ahead was filled with healing and adjustment, but their family bond, now stronger than ever, gave them the courage to face it together. Oliver, with his infectious smile and innocent heart, became the center of their lives, a symbol of resilience and the miraculous power of love. The orphanage could only afford Oliver's treatments thanks to the generous donations they received. Realizing the importance of transparency, Charles and Elena decided to tell Oliver the truth. They sat together on the couch, explaining the entire situation to the boy. Although initially confused, Oliver soon smiled warmly and hugged his parents tightly. The family was now poised to make up for lost time with abundant love and happiness. Oliver had found a new family, and Charles and Elena had gained the son they had always dreamed of. Their home was now filled with laughter and love, demonstrating that even in the face of immense challenges, true love always prevails. Sunlight bathed the room where Charles, Elena, and Oliver gathered. As Oliver played with his toys, Charles and Elena exchanged loving glances, still incredulous about the journey they had endured. Oliver looked up, his eyes sparkling with joy, and called out, "Daddy, Mommy." Charles and Elena, moved by his innocent joy, approached him. Oliver wrapped his small arms around them, feeling safe and cherished. "Oliver, my son, we love you so much," Elena said, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Yes, Oliver, we love you dearly. We are so happy to have you with us," Charles added, holding both Elena's and Oliver's hands. Their family was united, finally complete. Love and happiness overflowed in that room, showing that even in the face of the toughest challenges, true love always finds its way. Oliver's radiant smile mirrored the new life they were beginning together. Charles and Elena left behind the pain and mistrust, strengthening their bond and their union. They relished the presence of the son they thought they had lost, now more precious than ever. It was surreal to reflect on everything they had been through, but for now they wanted to savor these beautiful family moments together. They walked toward a future brimming with joy and fulfillment, knowing they were united and strong enough to face any challenge life might present. As they held each other close, they felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and peace. They knew that whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them as a family, bound by a love that had been tested and had triumphed. Their journey was a testament to the enduring power of love, a beacon of hope for all that was to come. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey of love, resilience, and the power of family. We've seen how even the most challenging circumstances can lead to the most beautiful outcomes when love and truth are at the core. What have you learned from Charles, Elena, and Oliver's story? Please share one thing you've learned and plan to apply in your own life in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to you. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.